please speak on the possibility of experiencing the knowledge of why the infinite ever manifested itself as seemingly finite?
The ocean, if always silent, it may even not be recognized as an ocean. It may just remain. People may think that it's the part of the earth because it's immovable. The ocean will lose its entity or identity or whatever if it doesn't rise up in waves. For the fun of play, the ocean moves up and down and then waves arise, and each wave is a wave of the ocean. Joy, a wave of joy. So, infinite became finite. It only took out in. In was out. The relationship between finite and infinite is only in being out. All right. Good. Then stay. The reason that is attributed to this phenomenal expression of the unmanifest infinite is for the sake of play. The finite values come out of the play of the infinite. It's a play. And it's a very interesting play. You know, when you see a football match, you can see the players as you like. If you want to see them all red, put on the red glass and they'll all be red moving about. Green glasses, everything would be green. Yellow, all will be yellow. The play is as the viewer is. And this is the reality of the play. The world is as we can have it. The world is as we can see it. The world is as we can find it. Different states of consciousness have completely different evaluations of the entire world. So the reality of the play is in the eyes of the beholder. In one stage, in which life is fulfilled, The whole play is on the level of infinity, no question of finite values, in the state of unity. How many have heard the name Vedanta? Vedanta is the exposition of life in the state of unity consciousness. Unity. Where everything is in terms of myself. Everything in terms of myself. When someday we'll dwell on the characteristics of different states of consciousness, we will find that the finite values of the world, finite values of manifest creation, gain infinite value in that state of consciousness. And in that state, duality, multiplicity has no meaning. The reality of life is absolute and eternally the same, absolute. No question of finite values. That is the reality of life on one state of consciousness. In other states of consciousness, there are some finite values. In some state of consciousness, very long span of finite values. In other states of consciousness, very short span of finite values. So there is range of the finite values, short and long. And in one state, finite values don't exist. What is eternally true? Infinity. So, this is the reality of the play. It all depends on how one can view, what glasses one have to see. State of consciousness is like a glass through which we see. Green glasses, red glasses, different states of consciousness. And when we have so many different states of consciousness, then we have so many realities of creation. And each reality is authentic. It's a reality. It's a reality. The world of dreaming state is a reality in the dreaming state of consciousness. The world of waking state is a reality only in the waking state of consciousness. And the reality of one state of consciousness is the reality of only that state of consciousness. It's not the reality of any other state of consciousness. The reality of unity is the reality of unity alone. It's not the reality of God consciousness or cosmic consciousness or transcendental consciousness. The reality of each state of consciousness has its own character, has its own value. And therefore, when we say the world is a play, then just as players are many in one play, the viewers are many in one play. Each viewer gets swayed by the play. Sometimes it is with this party when it is winning. Sometimes he is with the other party when the other party is winning. This way and this way and this way and this way. So the state of the viewers keep on changing. And that, he says, the joy of life, the joy of the play. So the story of life is very, very colorful, very colorful. And the colors keep on increasing as we keep on diving deep into the reality of life.
I have still some question in my mind about the first wave on the ocean of the Absolute. And I don't understand how a field that is unmanifested and quality less could manifest itself. And particularly, why would it have certain qualities? Why would it have a certain quality and manifest aspect? I need some clarification on that.
The meaning of the word manifest has that thing in it. When we say manifest means now it has taken a shape, a form, a quality. Unmanifest, just like the sap, without any color. Colorless sap. And now that colorless sap appears green in a leaf, appears red in a flower, yellow. That colorless takes many shapes, many colors.
Yeah, but what could be the mechanics of that first wave? Why would that occur?
Why will that occur? Because it is the nature of the ocean to float in the waves. Its nature. See, why does fire burn? It is the nature of the fire to burn. Why does water wet? It is the nature of the water to wet, to flow.
Well, maybe I can't understand the point, but if the field is unmanifested, how could it manifest itself? I mean, how could it, I still don't understand. What would be the nature of the field if it's unmanifested and quality less to develop a quality and to manifest itself?
There could be in that field of the Absolute, we found that thing, that in the Absolute state of life, in that unmanifest value, deep within its own nature is inherent the nature. Its one aspect of its nature is immovable, unshakable, stable. Another aspect of its nature is movable. And from this movable aspect of its nature, it starts to move. So the Absolute, even from the language point of view, when we say the word absolute, we mean the Absolute. But in that Absolute, the sense of relativity is involved. What we mean by Absolute is non-relative. So this involvement of relativity in the Absolute is obvious even from the language point of view, even from the expression point of view. The moment we say Absolute, we just mean not relative. And when we say not relative, we are describing that Absolute in terms of the relative, not relative. unmanifest. When we say unmanifest, the moment we say unmanifest, we are describing that state by the word manifestation. Manifest. Only we say this manifest is not available there. So the very description is in terms of the manifest. Like that, absolute is in terms of the relative. In this way, what we find is the very nature of reality is such that it is absolute and it is relative. Now, this understanding is verified in our direct experience when we are living in CC. When we are living in CC, inner unbounded awareness, and that is absolute state of life, and all this is relative. Now both become the living realities of life, subjective, self, unbounded, unlimited, immortal, eternal, absolute. Object, relative. This relative, this absolute, both are two aspects of my nature. My nature. In my nature, the non-variable phase I call absolute, the variable, ever-changing phase is called a relative. But this relative, this absolute is my nature. They are the two aspects of my own nature, like two sides of one coin of life. And therefore, what we find is that the relative is inherent in the absolute, and also absolute is inherent in the relative, because when we say relative is changing, is variable, when the relative is changing and variable, then when one thing changes into the other, is that the end of life? Experience says no. It changes into one thing, and then it changes into another thing, and then it changes into another thing, it changes into the other thing. What we see in this experience is that the change is continuing. Change, 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 change. These are like waves, and this is what we call a cycle, a wave, and then another wave, and then another wave, and then another wave. Now, this wave ends, and before the other wave starts, what is there? This wave, a relative existence, ends, and then it does not become vacuum for all times. Another starts, another change, with a cycle of change. Change continuum. Change continues, change continues, change continues. Relative life is ever changing. Now the word ever comes in. Ever changing. Eternally changing. Immediately the change is established on the level of eternity. Ever, always. And this ever, always, this field of eternity is just the field of the absolute. So, the very character of change, because it is always changing, it is ever changing, eternally changing, so this change is valid on the basis of eternity. Change is valid on the basis of eternity. This means relativity is based on absolute existence. Anything relative is based on absolute. This is what we say, that relative has its basis in the absolute. Absolute is upholding the relative. Because without absolute, change could never go on and on and on and on. But change is eternal. And this eternal aspect is absolute. Changing aspect is finite. It's finite. Finite value, infinite value. So finite is embedded in the infinite. Infinite is embedded in the finite. And here are the two aspects of one coin of life. Two sides of one coin of life. Both is the nature of life. Absolute, relative, may be that sometimes only relative is open to our awareness, or at other times absolute is open to our awareness in the fourth state of consciousness, transcendental. Only absolute is open to our awareness. Maybe, as in Sisi, absolute and relative both are open to our awareness. Situation of our awareness may be varying, but the reality of the absolute in the relative and relative in the absolute is an all-time reality of life, which we verify as we go along. As life is evolving from consciousness to consciousness, verification of the truth that absolute is embedded in the relative, relative in the absolute, life has these two values. This truth is verified when absolute and relative both become the reality of day-to-day life. On the subjective level, on the level of the self, unboundedness, absolute consciousness. On the level of the non-self, on the objective level, it is all relative, variable, finite value. So finite, infinite, just the very word infinite, finite in infinite. Infinite has it.
Would you say that the relative is the basis for the absolute? I was just handed a question here. Somebody wants to know what the basis is for the absolute. Is there a basis for the absolute?
Relative is the basis of the absolute, and we can even say such a thing on the basis of what TM is. What is TM? Gross experience, subtle experience, subtler experience, subtlest experience. So this subtlest experience, this transcendental experience is on the basis of what? The transcendental experience, this unmanifest experience, this unboundedness is on the basis of what? Sure enough, from our practice of meditation we know that the transcendental experience is on the basis of our experiencing finest state of thought. Finest state of thought. We come to the floor level just by coming on to the previous step, and then that step is on the basis of coming on to still previous step. And that step is on the basis of coming on to still previous. How do we know absolute? First, by knowing the finest relative. How do we know the finest relative? By knowing the finer relative. How do we know the finer relative? By knowing the gross relative. Gross, finer, finest, transcendent. And in this sense we can say absolute is based on the relative. We can say it. Because from this we step on to that. So the previous becomes the basis and what follows becomes the result. In this sense, it's all right to say absolute is based on the relative. Otherwise you won't know what absolute is.